I'm Coach Ren, and this is Technique Deep Dive, Press Edition. Why would you want to overhead press? This is something that we do every single day. It's fundamental to living. More often than not, we're pressing or lifting something over our heads, or at least at some sort of angle, rather than straight horizontally. Before the invention of the bench press, the overhead press was the gold standard for upper body strength. People would pick the bar up off the floor and press it over their head. And it was commonplace. It was actually considered baseline to overhead press your body weight. Most people could do much more. The overhead press works with multiple muscles, and it's actually can be considered a full body exercise. But the primary movers are the shoulders, triceps, and the aforementioned upper back muscles. So keeping the body more symmetrical. But at the same time, think of this as a standing plank. In order to lift heavy, you need to be able to keep your entire body tense throughout the lift. So the abs, the glutes, the quads all need to stay tight and rigid to provide a firm foundation to press from. To set this up, get the bar at about armpit to lower chest height. This will allow you to pick up the bar and clear the hooks as you come out. On every bar, there's what's called the knurling, which is the rough part of the bar. This allows for better grip, so every bar has this. Then you have the center of the bar that's generally smooth. Sometimes there's a little bit of knurling in the middle as well. But generally speaking, most people are going to start off with their index finger right on the line of where the knurling meets the smooth part of the bar. For some, a slightly wider grip might work better. If you have broader shoulders, you want this to be about shoulder width apart, or maybe a slightly more narrow grip. But I haven't really found too many people that need that sort of distance. When gripping the bar, you want to place it at the bottom edge of your palm so that it is supported by the forearms. You also want to maintain a straight wrist throughout the movement, or slightly extended. So in order to do this, to get that bar on the bottom of our palm, we're going to open the hand and just pivot it inward to around 45 degrees. So my fingers point in toward me. Then I wrap my fingers and thumbs on opposite sides of the bar. Step one foot underneath or both into a quarter squat position. Stand up, picking the bar up off the hooks, and just take 1 to 1.5 steps back. Assume about a squat stance, feet shoulder width apart, and the elbows, notice, are right under the bar. The bar should start around collarbone level. For some of you, this might be difficult because you're tight or your proportions just don't allow for it. And other people will be able to rest the bar right on their chest or collarbone area. Now, when you're learning to press, and as you get heavier and heavier, it's important to remember to keep your entire body tight, as I mentioned before. This means drawing the abs in and squeezing them as if somebody were about to punch you in the stomach. Squeezing your glutes together as well, and locking your knees so that you feel the tension in your quadricep muscles. If you maintain all this tension on top of taking a big breath of air and holding it while you press, you're going to feel a lot more solid and stable, and you're going to be more efficient when pressing. If your body is loose and you're moving all over the place, then you're leaking energy. You're leaking energy out in different areas that you don't want to. We want to be pressing straight up. We don't want to be moving side to side, front to back, whatever the case may be. So practice getting as tight as you can. Do it during your warm-ups. Do it when the weight's light. Do it when the weight's heavy. Once you've unracked the bar and set your stance, tighten your body up like I talked about, and then you're going to take a big breath in through your mouth, hold, and press. Now notice that I took a big breath before each and every rep I did. As you get more advanced, you may be able to do several reps on one breath, but at the beginning, practice taking that breath each time, 1 for practice purposes, and 2 so you don't get too lightheaded in the middle of a set. Make sure you breathe down into your stomach. Don't be taking shallow chest breaths. Breathe down, expand your rib cage, and hold that breath. When you start, get your head back first so we can press the bar in a straight line. I tilt my head back slightly and bring the bar up. Notice that once I get to the top, my head comes forward again, and I want the bar stacked right on top of me. Shoulders, elbows, and wrists in a straight line. You can also think about this as if you were going to brush your bangs. So we want to keep the bar in close as you can. If you're going out and around, you're creating a longer pathway for the bar, and it's much less efficient. So head back, brush the bangs, get it straight over your head. I'm also bringing the bar to a full lockout. I'm locking my elbows. I'm pausing briefly at the top to make sure I'm sturdy. That's how you finish the lift. Each and every time I come back down to my collarbone before repeating the rep. I'm also controlling the bar back down, not allowing gravity to take over for me. This will keep me under control and make the lift safer for me as it continues to get heavier. Some of the common issues I'll see is one, not locking the elbows out at the top. All right, this can happen for many reasons. One, for maybe you just don't know that you need to lock your elbows out. Maybe you're not realizing that they're not locking, or you have some sort of mobility restriction that you need to address. Could be the lats, could be the triceps. You will need to get some sort of an evaluation in order to know exactly what. Another thing is, as I mentioned before, the bar coming out too far and you do one big swooping motion or arcing motion. And then also not keeping the wrist straight as you do this. And this is going to put some strain on the wrists and make for a less efficient lift. So keep those wrists straight. Keep that bar stacked right on those forearms. And the number one issue I tend to see is people arching their back as they press. So this can happen when somebody is tired or somebody's spinal erectors are just really overactive and they're not engaging other muscles such as the core and glutes. So we want to keep that spine as neutral as possible. A little bit of arch is fine, but once we start laying back like this thing is an incline bench press, you've gone way too far. If you're doing a regular standard strict press, then keeping those legs locked is important. Bending the knees and getting an assist takes away from the benefit you get of using your upper body to do this. So unless you're doing a push press, which we'll go over in a minute, keep those knees locked and tight. Once you've spent a period of time doing the strict overhead press, and maybe you've been doing it for a few months and you've really worked your weight up to be quite heavy, you can then take a few steps back and learn a different technique that will allow you to lift just a little bit more weight. I'm going to take the bar and I'm going to do my first rep as normal. I'm going to lock it out. And now from here, instead of coming down and pausing at the bottom, I'm actually going to bounce out of the bottom like you would a squat. So I take my breath here, bounce, and drive it up. This allows me to use a little bit of momentum to get more weight up above my head. Now, you're going to want to take a few steps back, go lighter, and get used to this for a few sessions or more. If you're going to just jump into it with the same way you've been using, you're going to find that coming down this quickly is going to be really dicey. So do it in your warm-ups, practice it there, and then spend 2 or 3 sessions with some lighter weights in order to get it down and make sure you stay tight. It's very important that you stay tight as the bar comes down, so that way the bar isn't erratic and you're not shifting all over the place on the bounce. Seated press. So being seated is going to give you some more stability. You won't have to stay quite as tight, although you're going to want to. But the reason you can bench press so much more than you can overhead press is because of the added stability provided by the bench. So you can use a bench, you can use, sometimes they have a bench specifically designed for this where it has a nice back on it, or you can use a bench that you can incline up so that it is vertical. All right, so I'm just going to sit freely here. I'm going to take the same grip in the same manner, get under it, and bring it to my collarbone. From here, everything is the same. Keep your posture up, chest up high, brace the abs, and press. Next up, we have the push press. So if you want to build some more explosiveness or just get some more weight over your head, unlocking the knees and bouncing out of the bottom while getting that head out of the way will allow you to do so. Notice how you can't see, but my heels don't come off the floor. I just explode up without coming up to my toes. So I still have enough stability to keep myself from essentially falling over. Now, a couple variations for you if you struggle to do the overhead press with the bar. Maybe you have a shoulder that's tighter than the other by a significant margin, or you just can't reach back over your head. Using a dumbbell or a kettlebell and doing a single arm overhead press can be a great alternative. All the same rules apply. Some people you may see start out to the side. I prefer to start forward because that's how I press. Elbows point forward like so, and the bar rests on the bottom of the palm. So my elbow is forward, brace my abs, glutes, and quads, and then I press up and back so it's straight over my head. You can also do this seated or in a half kneeling position. And then the other option is to do some sort of an incline bench press, either with dumbbells or with a barbell as well. The landmine press is another great option. Simply pressing up over the face, and this will hit the shoulders and triceps much more than benching on a flat bench. So if you really struggle to get the bar over your head, this would probably be the last ditch resort for you to get some work that's somewhat similar to that without getting injured or tweaking something. Now, when it comes to your overhead press training, we're going to talk about a few things: sets and reps, weight, frequency, and rest periods. Sets and reps, if you're looking to predominantly gain more strength, then you're going to be focused on doing sets of between 1 and 5. If you're a beginner, something like 3 sets of 5 would be for you, 3 by 5. And then if you're more advanced, 5 sets of 5. So if you've been lifting for over a year, or if you've been, if you have experience lifting with the overhead press, then 5 sets of 5 would be a little better in terms of getting more volume, getting more reps in, and more practice. And then if you're really getting more aggressive, say you're getting closer to some sort of competition, or you're really trying to test your 1 rep max to see how much weight you can heave over your head, 5 sets of 1 just a week or two before you test that max will be very beneficial in terms of recruiting more muscle fibers, stimulating the central nervous system to push as much weight as possible. So that's your strength zone. If you're a beginner, like I said, 3 sets of 5 should be adequate for the first few months. But even so, as the weight gets heavier, you're going to need to drop your weights down a bit, or practice here in the muscle building or hypertrophy zone or rep range, 8 to 12 repetitions. So this is also really good for getting more touches in, getting more practice in. So the more repetitions you do, the better you're going to get at the movement, as long as you're practicing with good technique, of course. So 8 to 12 repetitions. Sometimes people get into doing a little bit more, but that's a good general area to stay in. You can build some muscle. You can, again, build a good, solid technique with the press, getting up as high as 5 sets of 8, which is going to be your more aggressive rep scheme. That's a lot of reps. It's a lot of volume on somebody, especially if you're, not in your 20s. Or 3 sets of 10, a little less aggressive, but still a lot of repetitions that you can use to build that foundation, as well as some muscle. So use this rep range when maybe your body needs a break from the really heavy stuff and you just want to continue to work on building more solid technique. Then weight. Between 50 and 80% to build muscle mass. So 50% is going to be more around your 10 or 12 rep range. And then as that weight goes up, the reps go down, of course. So 50 to 80% of your 1 rep max, if you know your 1 repetition max. If you don't, you're going to have to do it based on feel or your rating of perceived exertion. So in this case, you'd want to be around a 6 or a 7 when you're building muscle on the RPE scale. All right. And then for strength gains, 90+%. All right. So maybe 85 plus, but 90+% is really where you're going to be getting those heavy reps in and preparing your body for that 1 rep max or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, 3 rep max, whatever it is. So 90+%, really heavy. And you've probably been practicing for several months at that point. And then finally, frequency and rest. So we've talked a little bit about frequency in some of my other videos. This is a fairly untapped resource for a lot of people. So if you're just a casual lifter, once or twice a week is plenty in terms of doing any lift. You know, if you're being a little more aggressive and you just for whatever reason really want to build this specific lift up, then going up to 3 times a week may be beneficial. You're just going to have to closely monitor your recovery, make sure you're not overdoing it on your shoulders. Elbows too. So the more often you do it throughout the week, the better you can get, but you do have to kind of fluctuate what it is you're doing each day. So one day you might go really heavy and do maybe sets of 5 or 3. And then the next day, maybe you go light and easy. You do just 2 or 3 sets at a moderate weight to just, again, get more touches, more practice in. And then later in the week, you go for broke and do sets of 8 to 12 and get some volume in. So you're not always going really heavy, and you're also not always doing a ton of repetitions. You're kind of going through different rep ranges so that way you're not overdoing it in any one of them. So it's a good way to keep yourself from overdoing it. And then finally, the rest period. So 90 seconds, that's going to be more your 10 to 12 rep range, your shorter rest periods so that you're building some more endurance. And then as it gets heavier, the rest periods get longer. So 3 to as much as 5 minutes in between sets. The overhead press tends to be lighter than the bench press for the mass majority of people. So you might have a little more wiggle room in terms of not going quite as long with your rest periods, but you still want to get at least 3 minutes, maybe a little more when you're going with some really heavy like singles, doubles, or triples. Another approach you could take with getting some variety if you're doing it more than once a week is to do different variations. So one day you could do the strict press. If you're going really heavy and you're trying to test that, you do your strict press for your sets of 3 or 1, whatever it is. And then the next day, maybe you would do a single arm dumbbell press instead. Or another day you do a seated overhead press with the bar, whatever it is. You can mix in those different things depending on what it is you might need. If you're trying to really get, if you just want to lift heavier weights, maybe you do that seated press for a while, or maybe you do some push presses to get stronger at your lockout perhaps. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot.